The title of this episode is One of Three Teachers. This is Jack Lynch. This is being recorded April 15th, 2021. The date of occurrence was 1964. The place was New Windsor School, 5th grade. My teacher there was Mr. Marsden. I wasn't the best student in class, but sometimes I actually listened. Mr. Marsden had a segment about speaking in public. Each student was to stand up in front of the class and provide a talk for about 5 minutes. Being as my last name was Lynch, I wasn't the first one called. I was more like middle of the group. None of us was prepared for what was going to happen. Students were called up one at a time, stand in front of the class, and they were expected to make a little speech, a presentation about something. And nobody seemed to be prepared. One at a time, a student would be called up and would stand and have nothing to say. But Mr. Marsden was good about letting them stand up there the full 5 minutes because they could have been prepared. When that first day was over, I was concerned. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, really. I waited till class was over, and I went up to talk to my teacher, Mr. Marsden. Mr. Marsden said, shouldn't be too difficult. I said, well, how do I start? What do I do? And he says, find a topic that you know about, something that you do, or a hobby, or someone you know, or something that you've seen. But make sure it's something that you understand. He says, you can also go ahead and do research and learn a bunch of things and present that, but it's better that you just take something that is well known by you and give it to the class. I said, well, what about the outline? How do you do that? He said, the outline is basically a list of points that you're going to cover in your speech. They're going to be put down on paper so that you get them in order and you cover all the important issues that you need to give to the class. At that point, he introduced me to the 5 W's. Who, what, where, when, why. I heard that and I thought, this isn't that bad. I can do this. At this point, Mr. Marsden asked me, well, what do you plan on talking about? Is there something that you know something about that you like? And I said, yes. I keep rabbits. He says, that'll work. He says, you just need to tell the class how you raise rabbits, how you take care of them, and that sort of thing. I says, I can do that. He says, good. Why don't I have you be the first speaker tomorrow? You seem to have a good topic to cover. I think you can do it. Mr. Marsden gave me confidence. I went home, fed the rabbits, put them out in the yard a while, chased them around, put them away at dinner time, hid out in my room and got my pad out and made an outline. Covered everything that I wanted to put out there about keeping rabbits. The next day, when it was time for this speaking segment, I was called to the front of the class. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I had confidence. Mr. Marsden put confidence in me that with the right preparation, it's no big deal. I stood up and I delivered the speech, and it was no big deal. Worked out just fine. Mr. Marsden, that was the start. Public speaking, oral reports. The next step came about 6 years later when I was in 11th grade. I became a counselor at an outdoor school program. I didn't know anything about any of that. One of the topics that I was supposed to cover in front of that group was to teach a song to the whole outdoor school camp. That's about 150 people. I was nervous and worried about it. Then I heard your words. Pick something that you know. Don't try to stand up and fake it with something you don't know. I found a song that I knew. I practiced it, so I had it down pretty good. The following night, I was called up to teach that song to 150 people at camp. The name of that song is Wausau the 42nd. I taught it. The kids liked it. Holy smokes. It was easier than I thought. That was just another feather in my cap from Mr. Marsden. I proceeded to work with kids for the next 7 or 8 years, different programs, different situations. But it was never difficult to tell them what they needed to know out of my inventory of knowledge. Not a lot of it, but what I had, I was able to put out there. Later on, I ended up becoming a manager. This is with a company called Tektronix. It was a fairly large electronics manufacturer. I was the guy in a staff meeting or a group meeting that would ask a question or answer a question, and I would have my little folded piece of paper in my pocket that I kept my notes on. Well, they weren't really notes, they were my outline. It only took about 11 months of my doing that, and they decided I should be the manager. Along the lines of being a manager, I was pulled out from Tektronix by their president and asked to be a loaned executive with United Way. United Way raises funds for charities in the Portland area, and they were having a fundraising event. It was going to be going on for about 6 months and involve all the companies in the Portland area. I had a group of about 25 or 26 companies, and these were usually between 1,000 and 1,500 employees. And I got to talk to these employees as a group and as subgroups. It was no problem. Had the outline, knew what I was talking about, and put it out there. Except once. This was something, Mr. Marsden, you could not have prepared me for. There is a company called Nationwide Insurance. They insure cars and homes and stuff. Big company. This group was about 300 people in the Portland area office. That was added on to my group in my portfolio. I took a group of about 8 of those employees on a little trip to see a bunch of these charity organizations. The following week, I came back to Nationwide. They were having an all-employee meeting. Part of the meeting would be me telling them about United Way. No big deal. I'd done it before. The president of that Nationwide Insurance talked to the group. Human Resources spoke to them, and then they were told that we have a man here, a loaned executive from United Way, to talk to you about this year's fundraising. I stepped up to the mic and I said, "Hello, I'm Jack Lynch from United Way." That whole group in that meeting must have heard the stories about me taking them around to see these charities and the fun they had. They were happy to see me. They started clapping, and pretty soon they stood up, and it was a standing ovation. I wasn't prepared for the likes of that. I stood there with my mouth open, and whatever I had in my brains drained out on the floor. When they finally quieted down, I stood back from the microphone, turned around, faced away from them, and looked down at my feet to regain my composure. A few seconds later, I turned back around, went to the microphone, smiled, and said, "Hi, I'm Jack Lynch. I'm a United Way loaned executive." They were all smiling and laughing at that point. No problem. I told them about United Way, told them about the programs, went through the whole thing. Then I thanked them for listening. I also, before I left the stage, said, "And you're not going to get me with the standing ovation this time." I ran back to my chair and sat down quick. That public speaking also resulted in me having some successful stints on a few boards of directors. I wound up on the Girl Scout Board of Directors here in Portland. Also ended up being a chairman of the Linton Community Center Board, and also spent some time with City of Portland Budget Advisory Committee. This is all things where they ask you to step up and tell them what you know. No problem. Always had that folded piece of paper with my outline on it. The having an outline and being able to speak in public also had a very positive effect on some civil and criminal cases that I was involved in. I'm not an attorney, never was. Had a problem neighbor or two where we were living. Ended up going to court and testifying. The guy that had done it had a plea bargain, said that, yeah, he'll plead guilty to all the things that he'd done. He told the judge everything that he'd done, confessed it all. The judge turned to me and said, "Mr. Lynch, have you anything to say, or you any evidence?" My answer, of course, was, "Yes, Your Honor, I do." This time I had a big full legal pad with about 4 pages of outline on it. I sped things up, went through it in about 5 minutes' time. He said, "Do you have any other evidence?" Yes, I had a video cassette tape that I provided with video evidence of all this. The judge told the defendant and his attorney there will be no plea bargain. The evidence that I've got indicates that you will be held accountable. The guy got another week in jail. Instead of a month of probation, he was given 5 years of supervised probation, and he also had to pay the cost of anger management. Plus, the judge kept my notes and my videotape just for good safekeeping. That's how it's been ever since 5th grade. I have no problem standing up and saying what I know. It's affected me quite a bit in that I've ended up being a manager several times over. It's just a point of communication. I have to say, Mr. Marsden, thank you for giving me that. You're one of 3 teachers I've had that have had a profound positive influence in my ability to communicate and provide information. Thank you.